I now call the Des Moines regular City Council meeting for Thursday, April 13th to order, and I've asked Councilmember Nutting to do the pledge. If you could push your speaker. Thank you, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Nutting. Let the record reflect that all 7 council members are present. I got a statement and a special guest speakers tonight for the presiding officer that were not on the agenda. Coming back from COVID has been difficult. One part of our transportation system that has come back in a strong fashion is the SeaTac International Airport and the health, noise, and environmental impacts from the airport operations on our airport cities. From April 25th through April 27th, Deputy Mayor Buxton, City Legislative Advocate Anthony Hempstead, and I will participate in the first ever Stakeholder Advisory Roundtable, or START, in a DC fly-in. The goal of the event is to advocate to members of Congress and representatives of the Biden-Harris administration in support of the joint port cities' federal policy priorities related to aircraft noise and emissions. Many of these issues are related to actions and responsibilities exercised by our federal government. We intend to support any and all actions to mitigate the impact of operations at the airport and their effect on the city, residents, businesses, and schools. We continue efforts to be strongly positioned to respond to the environmental documents associated with the SeaTac Sustainable Airport Master Plan, or you hear it fondly referred to as the SAMP. As we work closely with other cities, their SEAP officials, and other national consultants that we have jointly employed in cooperation with our neighboring cities, our Community Development Director, Denise Lathrop, has been very involved in participating with the consultants in our neighboring cities to coordinate action related to the SAMP. Most aviation issues are governed at the federal level, so it is critical that Des Moines weigh in on that level to get changes needed that will improve the health and safety of all of us here in Des Moines. When we return from DC, we will provide a thorough summary of actions taken to date, the message from our federal representatives, and future actions we are planning to address for the negative impacts our city incurs from the airport. All right, thank you. The next thing I would like to bring on is I came across an organization called Praise Alleluia. You might know them because they have the new to you store. But I think they're important because they work in our community and several others, and they feed an amazing amount of people. They actually are one of the places our police officers, when they have somebody with mental issues, they have brought them to these folks, and they've actually been able to help them. They've got a great story, and I think our city has not had a chance to hear them. So I asked them to come today, and with that, I'd like Shawanda Taylor and Kelly Crow and guests to come up to the podium and speak on your behalf, share a little bit about what you do, and let the community know what you have to offer. So you come right up here.
Hi, I'm Pastor Shawanda, one of the founding pastors of Praise Alleluia. And we have Pastor Kelly.
To the mic.
Oh, sorry. Then we have Pastor Kelly. I'm Pastor Shawanda. Then we have Pastor Kelly, who's the founder. Lakeisha Perry, she is one of our disciples, one of our trainees. She's in leadership, and she's actually been trained to be a spokesperson, and so she's going to give it a shot tonight. And we have Paul Meyer, who is with us as well. And we brought these two so you can hear their story as well as ours. And we just want to say thank you for having us today.
Can you tell them a little bit about what you do, the full services?
Sure. So what we do in a whole is we started out as a faith-based treatment center, and that is our current position of what we do as well right now. And so we're faith-based treatment. We house men and women who are struggling with drugs and alcohol, just life controlling circumstances and situations. They don't have to be a drug addict. Although we are a faith-based treatment center, they don't have to be a Christian, and they don't have to have any money to come to us. Once they are there, if they're indigenous or indigent, we will house them, clothe them, feed them, train them, build them up, and at 90 days, they will go and we'll help them to get a job so that they can, in turn, start paying a program fee, which is $500, and then they can pay it forward for the next person that is indigent and needs to receive treatment. And so, yeah.
Can you talk about your food bank and how many people you feed and how many pounds you go through? It was amazing to hear. That's why I'm...
Yeah, you know, so when we first started our little food bank, it was just a little in-house food bank, and it was mainly for the 2 houses that we started in Des Moines, because we started at the old violin shop where we had men on one side, women on the other. We would have class in church on one end of the men's house, and we would receive our food, and, you know, we had to feed the men and women in the program. And being that Kelly has this gift of resources, we started to receive in abundance. And so it started out, we would put food on the side of the, like on the hill. We would put bread out there. We started out with just bread, you know, and the community would drive by, they would see the bread. And then finally, the city of Des Moines told us we can't do that anymore because it's starting to be unsafe. And so we said, okay. And we also found out at that time that where we were housing the men was considered and zoned as a garage. And so then at that point, we decided, okay, we got to get another men's house, and then we would also go in search of a food bank or a warehouse so that we can continue what we were doing. And so we were in the public storage right off of, at the end of Des Moines Memorial Drive. It was warehouses and offices, and that's where we opened up our first office and our first food bank. And so it grew and grew and grew. Finally, we had to get out of there because they changed the public storage, and we went up to SeaTac. And we started off, you know, just doing our regular thing, and then before we know it, especially with the pandemic and everything, we just kind of, we just blew up. And I think it was just God looking out for his people, really. And so right now, we bring in, how many thousands of pounds a month?
4.9 million. Yeah.
4.9 million pounds a month we bring in. And of course, we can't eat that much, right? And we don't want it to go to waste. And my husband, I mean, Pastor Kelly, we all love to give, you know, we've been given so much. And so it all goes right back out, besides what goes to, we have now, I think 4 or 5 men's houses, and we have 2 women's houses and a marriage house. And so, and we have children. And so almost, you know, the majority of that food goes right back out into the community. And several communities as far as Montesano, Spokane, but Des Moines is our home. Like, the plan was to come to Des Moines and to serve, because this is where Pastor Kelly grew up. He went to Mount Rainier High School. His mom owned a house not far from us, which we thought was really kind of a chuckle, you know, from the Lord, because we opened that house not far from where he grew up. And so, you know, excuse me, the city of Des Moines is the place where we're trying to get back to with our food ministry. Like, we want everything to be in Des Moines, but things happen, and so we had to move outside of there with our food bank. But we have started several food banks within Des Moines, in Burien, even neighborhood food banks. And so we're in SeaTac, but we don't only serve SeaTac, because the city of Des Moines is where the heart is. And so
So tell us about, so the New to You, obviously you're trying to raise monies, and so forth. So talk about how, in addition to shopping at New to You, how people in the community could help you with your charity.
Yes, and so we have the New to You thrift store. During the pandemic, it was really tough, but the city of Des Moines put us through. And the rest is by the grace of God. We have the men. Right now we have one cashier down there, but he trains the women. He trained the women so that they will be able to get a job, when they reach the program and it's time for them to go to work. The warehouse, the storehouse, is a hub to train usually the guys and some of the girls so that they can get a job. We also employ a couple of them so that they can get a job when they are at that stage. And right now, during the pandemic, we don't receive any state funding. We go out in the community and we work, and we've built relationships, and most of those relationships were outdoor companies, construction, car shows, all these type of things. And so when the pandemic hit, we took a really hard hit in our funding. And so we are kind of we could really use some help, so we could breathe and be able to just do, the things that we've always done.
So donations would be gladly accepted.
Yes.
Also, as far as the city, I know that you guys had talked about you wanted to ask our city manager possibly to take them on a tour of some of the businesses and your warehouse and stuff.
Yes, we would like to make an appointment with you. You have Michael the Archangel. You remind me of that. But amen. But yes, we would love to meet with you and just take you around to see what we do. Take you around to the houses. You've probably seen New to You. We're in our second location. We're on the end there now, up to the warehouse. We've actually, we would have loved to expand in Des Moines. We want to be here. We would love to expand.
I'd love to do that. I think if you could be in touch with Tara, our city clerk, who keeps my calendar, that we can set something up. Love to do that. Thank you.
Sounds good.
So thank you. I know we got a couple of your successes that we'd like to hear from. Council, I plan on making a motion from the Hearts and Minds Club for $500. But I want to hear you. I want you to hear the success stories. I was very touched with that.
Amen. Thank you. Oh, I'm so used to that. Sorry.
Go ahead, Lakeisha. Don't be. It's okay.
My name is Lakeisha, and I've been with Praise Hallelujah for almost 9 years now. I came in and I was really broken. I almost lost my children to CPS, and I was just in a really bad way. And while I was out there, I never heard of a program like this before. And being in that place of brokenness, I cried out to the Lord, and he heard me and brought me here to Des Moines. I'm originally from Tacoma, and so after being here for a year, with the support of Pastor Kelly and Pastor Shawanda and just everybody that's involved in the ministry, I was able to get my children back with a closed CPS case, and they've been with me in the ministry now for almost 8 years. And if it wasn't for Praise Hallelujah, I would be dead. And my children would be without a mom. And more than that, too, I learned that God has called me to a higher standard, and since being here in the ministry, I mean, I've been on 2 mission trips, and I'm getting ready to go on another one with my kids and my husband this time, and I'm just really thankful and grateful for this ministry. Thank you.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Paul. So to start this off, I've been with the ministry about 3 years. I was told it was a 6-month commitment, but let's just say, so I started off, I thought I knew who God was, but it seemed like the only time I really reached out to him was when I got in trouble, right? Whenever I went to jail, whenever I was like, please help me get out of this, right? And I would get an opportunity to do better, fall right back into my old ways. I would basically, any type of comfort I could find, I was trying to find it in all the wrong places, whether it was relationships, it ended up being in drugs. And I had gotten to the point where I was so broken that I said, I deserve this. This is who I am. There's no one that can help me. I tried treatment centers. I tried this. There's no one that could help me. I thought I really was lost, and that was the life I was pretty much destined for. And it was, the same thing where it was with her. There was one night where I was just crying out to God, like, okay, maybe this is your plan. Maybe I'm messing everything up. I don't understand what's going on. But I remember the last thing I said, I still said, I trust you. And I stopped crying. I kind of calmed down at that moment. It was like 2 days later, my stepdad was like, hey, there's this place I want to send you to that I think you should go to. And it was faith-based treatment. That's what I was told at first. And I was like, man, I've tried everything else. Well, what's one more thing, right? And I remember when I went to go meet PK, he was like, well, do you want to try and come in Friday? I was like, my bags are packed right now. I'm ready to come in. I needed it, and I had gotten so sick and tired of hitting the gas and I'm going nowhere while I'm seeing everyone else pass me by, and knowing the destruction I was causing to my parents, who just were trying to love me through it and give me words of encouragement, but they couldn't control my actions. And I also didn't want to go somewhere that was so far away that if I just came back, I was going to deal with the same issues, right? So I was plucked away from, because I lived in Auburn, just far enough to where I could be somewhere new. And I remember being there, it was completely new. I'd never done it before. I knew the word. I never studied all that stuff. And I started to get revealed what's going on inside of me, why I was seeking for the wrong things, because I wanted love. I wanted, people to love on me. And it was like, I just didn't know how to handle it. And when I would get it, I would take advantage of it, And so I didn't understand what unconditional love looked like. So, as the first few weeks I got put on the food trucks, where we go to pick up all the food from the stores, and we get to donate, and you get to meet people out there that are actually, even on the trucks, you'll get to see somebody, here, you need a box of food, and it brightens up their day, and it's something they never expected. One time I had a guy, he was working on his car, it was completely broke down. I guess they were there for 5 days. I happened to drive up, even though I was late. I was kind of irritated, thinking I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was supposed to be at that store earlier. He comes up to me and he said, hey, do you have any food? And I instantly, from being stressed out and all that stuff, I was like, I get to bless this person. And I gave them, as much as I could, and not even 5 minutes later, he got his truck started and got going. So if I was there at any other time, it wouldn't have happened. And those little things started to add up to say, okay, this is something different. And so I got to use those trucks, being with good accountability and stuff, to drive back past my old areas. So instead of seeing those old things that I did in destruction and did in the past, I got to say, I'm getting to serve my community now. I get to help these people. I'm getting to bring them food. I'm getting to do stuff for these people. And it was really what helped me get out of myself. Not only that, when you see somebody coming in, it makes you want to fight for that person because you know where they were at. I remember where I was at when I first came in, and I was, going through it mentally and physically. And when somebody's willing to just say, hey, anything you need, I got you. I'm going to clean your room. I'm going to do this. I got you food, anything you need. And it makes it easier. And they're speaking encouraging things, trying to not just, no, you can do whatever. It's, don't believe the lie. You're in a place full of love, right? And it was the love that kept me staying there. And that's what I try and give back to everyone else. And, I've been in the food ministry for probably 2.5 years. I've seen millions and millions of pounds go through, and how many people get blessed because they don't put a limit on giving, right? We don't just want this person to just take just enough for them. We want to bless them. If if it's too much for you, give it to somebody you know. Give it to somebody who needs it, right? Because it all comes back. Every time PK likes to say, I'm going to outgive God, right? So every time he tries to it just comes flooding back in. But it's that service And it's not even only that, because in this season recently, not just the food ministry, I've been getting sent out on different stuff where I'm getting to learn doing construction, you know, demolition stuff I'd never done before, that now in the future I get to take with me. I could say I have experience here. And so that's a lot of these people, they don't have a work ethic, because if they come off the streets, they have street smarts, they don't have a work ethic. And so we get to build them up and encourage them and help them learn how to better their lives and use their own hands and feet, because, I mean, nobody's a nobody. We've all got gifts. We've all got talents. You just need somebody to help encourage you and point you in the right direction. And that's all I needed. So through that, I met my wife. And that's all I got to say. It's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Okay. So hi, I'm Pastor Kelly from Praise Hallelujah. I'm really glad to be here. What an honor to be here. I love Des Moines, amen. And Michael, Archangel, we really definitely wanted to get into Des Moines, and we went to. I don't know. I went through a discipleship program, like what they said. I actually kind of ran around in your city for about 10 years, tore up from the floor up, and I grew up here, and I went to discipleship and was only going to go for 3 days, and I ended up staying 3 years. And we opened up Praise Hallelujah right over there at the old violin shop, and you know, the probably the greatest thing for me is you heard all their stories and my wife talking, but probably the best thing for me is watching families get restored back. You know, mom and dads that didn't want nothing to do with their kids, watching that get restored. Like Lakeisha, watching moms and dads get their kids back when they seemed like there was no hope. And then launching them back out into the world, being a godly man and a godly woman with integrity and honesty, and with a new toolbox. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's a lot of hours. You know, it's not just. You know, anyway, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, because it got happened with me. And as far as the food thing, just to touch on that, you know, that's just the more you give, the more you get. And last month I thought it was slow. We ended up bringing in about 4.2 million pounds of food, and we give out up there, and in Des Moines we're probably giving out during the week anywhere from 3,500 to 3,800 people in your city. You know what I mean? We got people do walk-ups and people drive-throughs. And so that's changing. That puts everybody in a good mood, right? If you get something for free, and you got food in your stomach, you know what I mean? And you get to love on people. And so anyway, so I'm Pastor Kelly, and I'm here to tell you that as far as he was talking about finances, donations, you know, I mean, money's great. We need money. I mean, we're just here to tell you that money makes things go, and we pretty much got everything else. You know, we always use cars and vehicles, and because we're running about 70 guys and about 25 women, and we're growing, and so that's my story. Amen. So.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So council and the residents here today and those watching, I was taking a tour and talking to them. I was just blown away, because we hear a lot about programs that don't work, are not effective, and this was one that was. And I thought the residents and us at the council should hear that. So I'm going to get back to, I'm making a motion that we take $500 from the Hearts and Minds Fund and donate it to Praise Hallelujah. I have a second. All those in favor? I see 6 of us: Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Oxford, myself. All those opposed? I see Councilmember Harris opposed. Motion passes 6-1. And I thank you guys for coming. Thank you. Okay. All right. Are there any correspondence?
There are no other correspondence outside the emails already received by council.
Okay. It is now time for comments from the public. I would like to just remind those participants that any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks will become boisterous threatening or personally abusive while addressing the council will be removed from the meeting, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Our first person is Miss Stephanie Harris.
Hello, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. My name is Stephanie Harris, and today I'm here to ask for your commitment to building the playground at Cecil Powell Park. As a parent and member of this community, I'm deeply disappointed about the lack of safe and inviting spaces for our children to play and socialize in the South End. And I am extremely disappointed in the lack of progress in building this playground since our November 2022 conversations. This neighborhood has been waiting for over a decade for the original playground. The original playground was removed in 2012. Children who were entering kindergarten at the time of its removal are getting their driver's licenses this year. A decade is far too long to have been waiting for construction of a new playground in our neighborhood, and it's time for action to be taken. Our children deserve a place to play that is safe, accessible, and engaging. This playground will provide an opportunity for physical activity, creativity, socialization, which are crucial to the development and well-being of our children, especially this current generation. Everyone keeps asking how to help children with their physical and mental health. Well, you have that opportunity to make a difference. You have the opportunity to provide physical and mental health for our city's children by simply building this playground. If timed correctly, Mayor, the unveiling of this playground could coincide with May's new title of Mental Health Awareness Month. And though the efforts have already been promised, we are at a point where this project needs active attention. I urge you to prioritize the construction of the new playground at Cecil Powell Park and to make a commitment to the children of my neighborhood and your city. Please commit to having the bids on this playground completed quickly and the playground installed before our kids are on summer vacation and yet another year of their childhood slips by. Thank you for your attention to the matter of Cecil Powell Park, and I look forward to seeing the progress on this extremely important matter.
Thank you, and I assure you we will keep you appraised of the progress. I know it's in the bidding and stuff is going through. It will get built this year, and it'll sooner, hopefully, than later, just so you know.
My daughter wrote you a letter.
And I responded back to her, and I told her that the day it opens, that her and I would cut the ribbon. And I'm looking, so I've got incentive too, and I'm excited. Hopefully I won't, hurt myself with the scissors this time. Anyway, thank you, Ms. Harris. All right, moving on to Ms. Victoria Andrews.
Thank you so much. Questions, I have questions, and hopefully some of them will be answered tonight. First, I want to thank the council and administration for reinstituting the Citizens Advisory Committee. Have council members and the administration discussed the role this committee will play, who will run it, and how frequently it will meet? I understand one of the committee's first tasks will be to provide input on the selection of the next chief of police. So, Ken. But what about the Marina Steps? Is there some reason why the council couldn't wait to vote on the KPFF proposal to give committee members a chance to ask questions? Speaking of the Marina Steps, the proposed schedule is ambitious, and it's a huge project that will disrupt my street, which is 223rd, for many months. The text indicates that task 2 will be to, quote, prepare alternative analysis study and public outreach, unquote. That is supposed to take place this June. How will the public hear about it? The city's website, Facebook, in the Currents magazine, other ways? The proposal only offers one open house and one public survey. Can the Citizens Advisory Committee be involved in it as well? And perhaps a targeted mailing to the 223rd corridor residents. You're paying the consultants a lot of money, you should make them work for it. Regarding ADA accessibility, has the administration double-checked with appropriate authorities to make sure the proposed grade for the path down to Dock Avenue doesn't exceed 5%? That cliff is steep and the switchbacks seem to be crammed into a very tight configuration. All you need is to get it done and realize it wasn't built to code and won't serve the entire community. That would be embarrassing and a terrible waste of money. Now a question about the sequencing of the Marina Steps project. Wouldn't it make more sense to build the dry stack storage facility first, The marina brings in revenue, while the Steps project doesn't, at least directly. And speaking of revenue, when does the city plan to replace the parking gates with gates rated for outdoors? That was an expensive mistake, and there's no revenue coming in as long as those gates are not working. Finally, bonds will be required to pay for this multi-million-dollar project. I don't know much about bonds, only that they must be repaid, and that eventually will be borne on the backs of us taxpayers. When should we be prepared to hear that our taxes will be increased? I want the council members to ask questions tonight and not feel pressured to vote unless and until your questions have been answered to your satisfaction. We've waited a long time for change, and we can wait another month or two to get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Moving on to Mr. Bill Linscott.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members, City Manager, everybody else gathered here tonight. I want to make a couple comments on the development direction article that was in the City Currents, and then one item on the agenda tonight. Had 4 directions out there. Direction 1, stay the same, a sleepy little town continuing to wonder why we never achieved our potential. So we've had more change in this town over the past 6-7 years than you can shake a stick at. And I remember Matt Pina actually saying, I'm sick and tired of hearing about our potential. And he said, we're achieving our potential every day with change and progress. And I don't think we've got a sleepy town here. Direction 2 has to do with doing the same things we've done since 1984. And more public forums, debate and argue about the same components of development and let progress fall by the wayside. Well, so public forum is important. And you've heard we want it, the public wants it. It's part of democracy. The community wants to be involved. We really don't care about the history of the debates. We just want to engage on today's plans and the projects. Direction 3 was we can face development in the downtown, or we can force development in the downtown area. The city will work with the property owners, private property owners, and that's good. They'll not step on the rights of the property owners, and that's good too. But you can hold them accountable for the care and maintenance of their property, and you can help them with the infrastructure and zoning matters, things like that. And I think the city should spend more time in the downtown area on its development piece. Direction 4, move forward with the 39 years of information and build it. And yes, that's what you're doing. And I think the public doesn't feel like we've been taken along with you, and you've heard that from us. It's not about the 39 years of information. It's more like, what have you included us on recently? So Citizen Advisory Board, that's great. It should help. Vision of the marina and the downtown, there's still no approved renderings or a fly-through view of that future city we have. There's not a master plan connecting all the various project plans that are underway. The financial plan for 15 plus years, including debt service, is not out there yet. And we still haven't had a lot of town hall engagements yet. So direction area 1 is past and kind of irrelevant. Direction 2, 3, and 4 are relevant to the successful development effort. On the topic tonight, the reimbursement resolution, I'm not sure it's needed. I don't understand it. I'll get more informed. But more importantly, I'm concerned with the city maybe incurring costs in advance of receiving the bond proceeds. Where's the money going to come from? Is it out of the CIP? If it is, what gets delayed or deferred? Thank you for the comments tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Linscott. Moving on to Mr. Michael Rhodes.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayors, City Councilors, City Manager. These are comments provided to me by Bill Bishop, who lives right next door, but he's out of town, and he asked me to present them to you so that we could all hear what he has to say about this. It's in reference to the new business, and it goes like this. Mr. Mayor, Council members, and City Manager. Respectfully, Mr. Mayor and Manager, you have once again decided to tell us what we want without collaborating with us to reach mutual goals. You have appointed the Citizen Advisory Board members, but you're not waiting to receive their input before moving forward with major capital projects. With presumably 1 week's notice to the citizens of Des Moines, you are proposing to borrow and spend 15 million taxpayer dollars with virtually no input from the public and with no explanation on how this borrowed money will be repaid. Even worse, tonight's agenda suggests that you expect the council to vote for an expenditure of $800,000 on a consultant's contract for the Marina Steps. That was only signed by the consultant on 5 April 2023. The question is, have the council members even had time to review the supporting material and to ask their constituents on whether this project worth spending $6 million or even $9 million on? There is a potential financial disaster for the city of Des Moines, spending money on a project that generates no revenue and the only one that has very few people know about. The Marina Steps project was just announced for the first time last September, and the only real public meeting discussing it was a study session in late January. At this time, the council should reject the mayor and manager's attempt to hire an $800,000 consultant to design the steps until the citizens of Des Moines have had, at the very least, an opportunity, acting through the Citizens Advisory Board, to tell the council this is a project worthy of such extravagant expense. The consultant, KPPF, calls this an iconic project that will cost $6 million. Do we really want something iconic, or do we want a project that benefits our city? On top of everything else, there seems to be confusion about the cost of the Marina Steps. The city attorney's proposed new ordinance 23-22 says the Marina Steps is a $9 million project, while KPPF's proposal consulting agreement calls it a $6 million project. So it's clear that they really have no idea what it'll cost. How can we be ready to move forward when the numbers differ by $3 million? Following are my additional specific thoughts on tonight's agenda for new business. The city's proposed consultant states that the budget for Marina Steps and Public Place will be $6 million and $1 million, respectively. More likely, the cost will be even higher before things are done. The debt service on these bonds with a AAA rating will cost over $38,821 per month in principal and interest rate of 3%. Since the steps and plazas generate no income, how will the city meet its obligation? What are the debt limits and what are the consequences of falling on the payments? The city has only had this consulting proposal from KPFF since April 5th. Why are we rushing to pay an additional $800,000 consulting agreement before the council members have barely a week to look at it? The consultant specifically says it is not including anything in its project plan for the evaluation of future higher water levels. Given that we are experiencing increased global warming, why are we ignoring this? Doesn't the marina need to be raised heights of its seawall throughout? The mayor, manager, and city attorney are proposing a new ordinance 23-22 to approve the past 60 days of expenses within a planned bond issue for the Marina Steps and Plaza, etc. Other than the $800,000 consultant contract, what else have they spent to date on these projects? The current Marina Steps ignores the negative consequences to the farmers market and will do away with Dock Avenue. And the farmers market moves south. Won't that take up valuable space enjoyed by the marina tenants? The small public plaza that is planned will necessitate a substantial downsizing of the farmers market and may be the loss of the beloved food trucks. And where does the quarterdeck fit into this plan? Again, the loss of parking cannot be made up anywhere. And the loss of Dock Avenue as an emergency access route to the north parking lot and to Beach Park is critical. If the city's plan is realized, there will be no means of emergency access to the North Marina in case there's a blockage of Cliff Drive, which is also a very narrow access road. Dock Avenue is also essential to providing emergency access to the boat storage facility that is planned to replace the boat sheds. You may now shoot the messenger.
Thank you, sir. I let you go a little long, but I wanted you to be able to finish. So go ahead. Thank you. All right. We're moving on to the city manager report. Michael, I'm going to turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Couple of things related to an earlier comment. The city is currently close to finalizing agreements for security, maintenance, hygiene of the bathrooms, access for Stephen J. Underwood, so we could open that park up on a full-time basis through the summer for people to use, residents to use. So that's a step forward for us. Cecil Powell is also close to the work being done. I think it had to do with some permits and some of the bids for the equipment and so forth. But those are on the radar and things that we're working to move forward. There's an item in here on consent tonight talking about 4th of July, and our proposal to the council is that we do something innovative. We're now taking over responsibility for the fireworks based on some of the complexities associated with COVID and some of the problems that existed last year where we kind of had to step in at the last minute. And thank God for the relationship that Kai, our project manager for the North Bulkhead, had with the contractor who voluntarily moved the fireworks with a crane onto the fishing pier. So we appreciate that, but it wouldn't have probably happened without that. So we, in discussions, are going to take responsibility for the fireworks, and we're going to use a sort of a drone setup, which is both ecologically and environmentally a sounder way to do things, and see what the community thinks about that. That's on consent tonight. I'd like to ask the Chief of Police, Ken Thomas, to talk a little about some of the events of last night. Chief?
Yes, good evening. So I just wanted to update the council and the community who's here. I was notified first thing this morning that at about 4 o'clock this morning, we started getting reports of glass breakage at several businesses in our downtown corridor. And by the end of the morning, by the latest reporting I heard, we have at least 15, possibly 16 different victims, businesses and condos, primarily in the downtown, Anthony's, the All-Star Tavern, the Dollar Store, several other businesses up and down the corridor. We started getting some video, and the first videos that I saw were just of terrible quality. And so I mentioned to Sergeant Oak, our PIO, hey, let's gather up as much information as we can, and let's get a press release out, and maybe somebody can identify this suspect. I had a conversation with the city manager, and he told me, hey, notify the council, let's get everybody notified on this. And by the time we could get the press release put together, we had video coming in. And you may know Tanya Seabury, who's part of our Getting People Services team. And she immediately recognized the suspect from the terrible video of a person that she's been working with over the past several months, a person that's homeless, that has been staying in the downtown area in his vehicle. And she named him, and we located him within about 10 minutes. And he is in custody. He requested an attorney, so he's not speaking with us, but he was still wearing the same clothes that he wore last night or early this morning when he committed these crimes. So our detectives are working diligently to get the case filed as a felony. We estimate so far a minimum of $30,000 loss to our business members in the community and those few condo owners. A couple of condo windows were broken out, but we think it's probably closer to $40,000 or $50,000 once we get those receipts. It was a substantial economic crime to our community. I'm happy that the person responsible is in custody. I do believe, and we heard a little bit earlier about the mental health and substance abuse and the assistance that those people need, and we do that with our Getting People Services group. But this suspect from early this morning was definitely had those problems, and so we'll see how that works through the process. But we are moving forward as aggressively as possible to have him held accountable for those crimes.
Thank you, Chief. Great work by you guys. And tragic that you have to do that. Also, when Chief mentioned a PIO, that's a public information officer who prepares the interaction with the media. One other comment, we have anticipating the Citizens Advisory Committee and their meetings, we were able to get in touch with and hire a very excellent communications consultant who will facilitate those meetings. And that will, I think, help create what we want to accomplish is a sense of objectivity and neutrality in the manner in which those are conducted. And other than comments that will come up during the meeting relative to some of the issues, Mayor, that concludes my report. Oops, one more thing. Thank you, City Attorney, keeping me honest here. We have, I will be in the next week or so signing documents with, to provide the passenger ferry service. We'd originally anticipated bringing those forward to council at the third meeting in April, but we're not going to have that third meeting. So we're arranging now for the delivery of the boat, which is in San Francisco, and hoping to avoid atmospheric rivers as it makes its way up the coast. But in terms to facilitate the timing of that delivery, and then also to implement the operating agreement for the ferry to start working, we are going to sign these in advance and then have council ratify them. They are within the framework of the budget that was allocated and approved by the council, so we feel that that's fully within the parameters council established. Anything else? Yeah. Okay, I think that does it. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Mathias. Will the city clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, approval of minutes. Item 3, Mental Health Awareness Month proclamation. Item 4, Affordable Housing Week proclamation. Item 5, Arts Commission appointment. Item 6, 4th of July drone show. Item 7, Washington State opioid settlements. Item 8, 24th Avenue South Improvements Project, Puget Sound Energy Easement. Item 9, 24th Avenue South Improvement Projects Right-of-Way Dedication. Item 10, King County Flood Reduction Grant Award, and that concludes the consent calendar, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any council member that, oh, go ahead.
I move to approve the consent as the consent agenda is read.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any council member that wishes to pull an item? Councilmember Harris.
Item 6, I believe, the drone thing?
That's correct. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. We will be voting on the consent agenda on items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All those in favor? Motion's passed unanimously. All right, with that, we move on to item 6, the drone show, and I turn the floor over to Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my first question is and I want to thank the administration for the responses I received. They were refreshingly complete. And I would like to know the possibility of hiring a traditional fireworks show at this date, if that's an option within that $90,000 budget. Can that happen?
I don't know.
Okay. The next question is, so this is, in the answers I received, there's nothing involving music, and I'm all about, like, you know, I mean, yeah, I don't know, because I just saw all the demos that I've seen. They have very elaborate, you know, REO Speedwagon and, you know, John Philip Sousa and so on. So, yeah, is there plans for, you know, accompanying
Yeah, so Councilmember Harris, in the packet, it talked about the ability for this folks to use their phones and so forth to tune into music that was synchronized with the drone show.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking about like just anything
Yeah.
live.
Well, it's kind of the newer way. It's meant to go and it's all electronic and programmed in, so it's in sync with each other and so forth.
Right. I appreciate that, but I guess my question was for the administration.
Yeah, well, I just happened to see it in the packet, so I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure you knew.
Councilmember, we were not going to spring this on you until later, but kind of as a surprise, we were going to invite you to play bass.
Oh, great.
At the,
I think there's nothing like a 20-minute bass solo. I think that's when, the rest of the band just, yeah, there's an old joke about that. So, okay, well, basically, that's all I got. Thank you.
I'll just interject and then I'll call on you. You know, this is something that's different that nobody's doing, but it is the way that fireworks will move to. Several people's pets and several people are directly affected by the noise of the fireworks. I worked in the fireworks industry for a few years for a Native American family, part of the Swinomish tribe. I also know about the chemicals that this blasting into the sound and so forth. And I could tell you the future of the fireworks as you know today are soon to end. They have to, for what actually the negative impacts. That's not anything anybody wants to hear in America, but it is the way. By doing this and being innovative and being one of the first ones to do so would be a tremendous draw to our community, not only for our residents but others, and it would show a great responsibility. If you don't get the chance, please Google and YouTube drone replacement of fireworks, and you will be amazed at what it can. I'm sorry, we don't ask questions here. We don't answer questions here. The thing is that this is the wave of the future, and I think it'll be exciting and so forth. There's also great opportunities where you can get donors and actually show their logos and stuff. So there's some fantastic opportunities. But this is the design is we want to do something new that's environmentally friendly, break ground, and move forward in a new way. And I think this is worth the investment. Deputy Mayor Buxton.
And just another comment regionally, this originally came out of a deputy mayor's meeting last summer, just within weeks after Redmond was kind of the pilot city in King County to do something like that. And they had an overwhelmingly positive response in their city about their show last year. And so I think that was kind of the impetus. And I think several cities have actually looked into it since then. So we're hoping that our community really enjoys this.
Councilmember Harris, your second time.
Yeah, so this is the kind of thing, Citizens Advisory Committee and so forth, this is not the kind of thing that you spring on a consent agenda item. This is the kind of thing, if you know about it last summer, you talk about it last summer, and you sell the item to the community so that they are on board. If it turns out to be fabulous, fantastic. But this is just... Yeah, that's it.
All right. Councilmember Oxiger?
Yes, I'm just curious as how we're going to assess, the response to this, because I do think that, historically speaking, the reason or one of the promises that was made when we instituted the fireworks ban was that in order to try and stop the personal fireworks that go on in the neighborhoods, the argument for coming up with a show at the marina and also banning the personal fireworks was that we're going to put on a better show, and it's going to be much preferable to the neighborhood displays. So how are we going to assess what the response to this is?
Isn't council the sort of the rheostat for feedback from the community?
I would also add, I think that, we're going to hear about it through social media and other things and so forth. But it's a replacement for. The fireworks continue, the police chief could tell you that. They're probably gonna be easier to locate. Of course, we've got Normandy Park next door, who doesn't have a policy yet, which is always problematic because it gives the impression that there's violations in our city. But I think it's the wave of the future, and it's a suitable replacement to the same means that you just described. Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea because it solves a lot of the problems that we have with the fireworks. Pets are traumatized by it. There are some individuals in the community that have some trauma. The loud noises just are very disturbing. The effluent that comes off of the fireworks has to drop somewhere, and in this case, it drops into the sound, and that's some pretty nasty stuff. So we're adding to the pollution of the sound doing that. The drone thing is not as new and groundbreaking, I think, as you're presenting it, Mr. Mayor, no offense intended. Places like Disneyland have had coordinated drone shows, for 5-10 years. It's finally getting to the point where that technology is accessible to little cities like ours. And as a consequence, I think this is very forward-looking. I think it's better for everybody involved, and I hope everybody enjoys it. I'm sure there'll be some that want the traditional fireworks back, but we do have a lot of feedback loops here in Des Moines, and gosh knows, we hear them. We hear them a lot, particularly when people don't like what it is. But I think there's a lot of positives out there too, and I think that this will please a lot of people in presenting a good show that doesn't negatively impact the community and provides a very positive experience. So I think it's a great idea.
Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah, I'd support this. I think, it's a positive change. I think in terms of a public display, Councilmember Harris, occasionally we agree on things, and I think that, if we're gonna have a public gathering, in the beach park, or I think if they could transmit some sort of the music into a large sound system, that'd be cool. But in terms of what fireworks do, now certainly I've spent the last 40-some years working on the 4th of July, and the damage that is done from private fireworks is absolutely horrific. Every year, there are people that have pieces of their body blown off. Every year, there are houses and parts of condominium units that are and apartment units that are burnt up. There's a lot of downsides when you mix blowing things up and throwing fire into the sky and alcohol. It's never a good combination, ever. That being said, you can ban all of the fireworks, and there's still going to be those that get those because we're nestled next to a couple of reservations that sell this. So the best we can hope for is that we have a wet 4th of July so that the bushes don't burn up, that people use some common sense, and but I can tell you it's a sad thing. This, and I have actually worked on the pier over the years as part of the safety team when they lit that off, and to talk about it is amazing, the debris that comes off of those fireworks. Absolutely amazing. And and those of you that have boats and that go out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The pollution that goes into the water is tremendous. And so I'm in favor of trying this. I think it's kind of cool, and I think if we can coordinate it with the music and the
festivities, and that, I think it can be very successful. So I'm looking forward to watching this from my deck this year. So anyway, that's all.
Councilmember Oxley, your second.
Okay, I want to make it clear that I'm not advocating for the fireworks as we've done in the past. I think that this is a great alternative. However, going forward, I think that probably we are going to be in a position where we're having to sell it, and it would be nice to have some kind of assessment of public response that we can point to and say, look, this is it. And I don't think talking to us council members individually or anything else that's basically, third-party hearsay. If we have a way to assess what the public's response is, I think it would be appropriate, and I think the public would appreciate an opportunity to weigh in.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Nutting.
I just have a comment that this is just being good stewards of noise pollution and pollution of the sound. So with that, I'm making the motion to approve the proposed agreement for Sky Elements Drone Show for 2023 4th of July celebration. Authorize the city manager to sign the agreement substantially in the form as submitted.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Pennington. All those in favor?
Okay.
I see.
You've just got the motion on the floor. Now comes discussion.
We just had a discussion. During the motion, you had your chances. If you'd like to say something, go ahead, sir, before I take a vote.
I would like to propose an amendment that we develop a formal process for gauging public opinion on this.
Deputy Mayor Buxton?
We just did that a few weeks ago when we engaged our communications consultant, and we will each have an opportunity to spend at least an hour with them, and so that would be, up until now, the avenues that we have for receiving public input are the same as that they've been for decades, and so we engage in actually more ways now than we did even 7-10 years ago. Because of social media, we have even more of an opportunity to engage with the public, but we'll even have more. We're working very hard on that. So I would say your motion is already being answered with the engagement of these communications consultants. So that would be a good thing for you to input on that. And I think that would, in fact, that would be a good thing to ask for, not just for this process, but for a lot of different of these processes. Anytime we want more detailed input than we've ever been able to get before, I think that they're going to give us some options.
So I'd have a second on the motion. Okay, Councilmember Steinmetz?
Yeah, I still have a question on the motion.
Oh.
I don't understand the motion. What are you asking? A poll? Are you asking?
A poll, we could do a poll, we could do a survey,
Okay, I'm not gonna.
authorize a survey.
Okay, I'm still not done yet. Because there are lots of options that could fit into getting feedback. Everything from, a radio button on the website, do you like it or no? Where it's very passive and somebody has to come do it, all the way to actively seeking out a poll. And if so, how do we fund that?
That's the discussion.
Well,
And so-
the motion, the amendment is to do some things. What is it to do?
Is to conduct a formal poll of what the public's
Really
response is.
quick, I need to clarify, we need a second before we go into further discussion, because if there's not a second, it's going to die. Do I have a second? Seeing none, motion dies from lack of interest. All right, we're going back to the original motion, which was made and seconded. All those in favor? I see Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Oxiger, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Harris. Motion passes 6-1. All right. I've got a few proclamations to read. Whereas mental health is part of the overall health, and whereas 1 in 5 adults experience a mental health problem in any given year, and 1 in 17 adult lives with mental illness such as major depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, And whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause among young adults. And 90% of people who die by suicide had shown symptoms of mental health conditions, according to interviews with family, friends, and medical professionals. And whereas early identification and treatment can make a difference in successful management of mental illness and recovery, and whereas it is important to maintain health and learn the symptoms of mental illness in order to get help when it is needed. And whereas every citizen and community can make a difference in helping end the silence and the stigma that for too long has surrounded mental illness and discouraged people from getting help. And whereas public education and civic activities can encourage mental health and help improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. Des Moines City Council hereby proclaims the month of May 2023 as Mental Health Awareness Month and encourages all citizens, businesses, schools, and community organizations to take a stigma-free pledge in observance of mental health awareness. Signed this day, Mayor Matt Mahoney. Do a lot of talking, run out of water. Thank you. Whereas all people should have access to safe and healthy, affordable homes within communities that provide opportunity. And whereas the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, our HUD, defines affordable housing as housing on which the occupant is paying no more than 30% of gross income for housing costs, including utilities. And whereas the Department of Commerce projects that by 2044, King County needs nearly 200,000 net new housing units for households at or below 80% area median income. And whereas studies have found that each $100 increase in median rent results in a 15% increase in homelessness in metro areas and a 39% increase in homelessness in nearby suburbs and rural areas. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated many existing financial constraints for low and moderate income households. And whereas the CDC recognizes safe, healthy, and affordable housing within the communities of opportunity as key social detriments of health. And whereas everyone benefits from affordable housing, including the people who reside in these properties, their neighbors, businesses, employers, and the community as a whole. And whereas united to raise public awareness, people, organizations, and communities throughout King County are participating in local Affordable Housing Week activities to elevate the critical need to create healthy communities with ample affordable housing. And whereas the City of Des Moines endorses the goals, objectives, and purposes of Affordable Housing Week, and in doing so, firmly recommits itself to ensuring that our community recovering from the crisis at hand is equitable and that all people in Des Moines live with dignity in safe, healthy, and affordable homes. Now, therefore, the Des Moines City Council hereby proclaims May 7th through the 13th, 2023 as Affordable Housing Week. Signed this day, Mayor Matt Mahoney. Thank you. All right. And before I begin the public hearing, Ms. Harris, I just wanted you to know that during the meeting, other than public comment, there's not questions from the public. So no offense was intended, but I just wanted you to understand, okay? All right. We will now be doing the draft ordinance number 23-021 public health hearing on continuing a moratorium for new development in the business park area and adopting findings of fact. The staff presentation will be done by Community Development Director Denise Lathrop, and I will now call the hearing in order.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Denise Lathrop, Community Development Director. So as the Mayor indicated, tonight's public hearing is to receive comments on draft ordinance number 23-021, which relates to the extension of the moratorium that was established in the business park area to October 26th of 2023, and that is pursuant to the requirements in the Revised Code of Washington, 35.63.200, and to adopt findings of fact to support the extension of the moratorium. So the state grants cities the authority to establish moratoriums as well as to extend them or renew them. And so as you're aware, in December, the City Council held a public hearing and adopted findings of fact to continue the moratorium until April 27th, 2023. And so in order to extend that, we have to hold a subsequent public hearing to take any potential comments and adopt additional findings of fact. So while we had anticipated potentially extending this when we had the initial hearing, we did have a delay in receiving our final executed contract from the Department of Commerce. That was about 2 months after council approved that, and we sent it right into Commerce. And so that is what's funding some of this work. The work is underway, and so this additional extension will allow our city staff and our consultants time to complete the studies, bring any types of recommendations to the council for consideration prior to the extended date of October 26th. We noticed the public hearing per the Des Moines Municipal Code. We did not receive any public comments during the comment period unless there is testimony tonight or comments received. With that, I have 2 motions for consideration. Thank you.
It is now time for the public comment portion of the public hearing. Has anyone, and I know that nobody signed up to speak correctly.
No, Mayor.
So I'm going to ask the attendees, is there anyone who didn't sign up that wishes to speak on this issue? Sir, you do? Okay. Come to the podium and go ahead and identify yourself. And you're supposed to say whether you're in favor or opposed, and then give your reasoning.
Yes. So I am fine. I have no problem.
Could you state your name and the city you live in?
I'm sorry. Yes, my name is Joel Mansonides, and I have property in this area.
Okay.
I'm interested in having some parking in a section of this, and of course this is delaying my ability to use the property. But I'm willing for it to proceed. I just want to note that we are interested in using this, so hopefully this won't be delayed again. I don't think it can be, but I want to park some and move a small business into this area here. And so I just wanted to let us know that it is affecting us financially, having it delayed, but you know, it's justifiable. Sounds like why there's a delay in it. I just wanted to state that, yeah, I want to use some property here and apply to have and very interested in to see where the zoning is going to come out on the property. That's it.
Thank you, sir. All right. I'm going to ask a second time. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Seeing nobody. All right. And a third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak? Nope. All right. Seeing no one else has signed up to speak, council, do you have any questions? Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, Ms. Lathrop, as I remember, and the picture seemed to show, this is on the south side of 216th and is surrounded by residential. Is that correct?
There is residential to the west, south, and east, and then the business park is on the north side of that area. So the northern boundary borders South 216th.
Yeah, the road itself is that barrier.
Yes.
The boundary.
Yes.
But otherwise, to the south, to the east, and to the west, it's residential, isn't it?
Correct.
And yet somehow the zoning in this area allows for something that may potentially be incompatible with residential neighborhoods. Is that correct?
I mean, the city council adopted the zoning for the area, and so the goal here is to reevaluate that in light of our comprehensive plan update.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will be looking at compatibility, we're looking at our jobs and housing targets that we need to meet.
Okay.
And considering also the fact that the northern area has pretty much built out too.
Okay. And as part of the evaluation process that the city's going to do, will you be contacting the property owners to get their input? Is there a form for that?
Yeah, our plan is to, once our consultant completes some of the underlying land use studies and market analysis, we will be coming forward to present some findings. And so our intent would be to either notice that as part of a council study session where we have an opportunity to provide public comment. And the way we've been noticing these meetings is all the property owners within as well as the surrounding property owners that we notify as part of our SEPA noticing are also notified, and then we publish those notifications as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Nutting.
I just had a quick question about the gentleman that spoke. Has there been anything brought to the city on his intentions with the business or parking that he intends to place in that area?
I am not aware where his property is located, but I will reach out to him and get his contact information, because we can always, if he hadn't received a notice to date for some reason, we will make sure he's on our contact list.
Okay, and if you could bring that either back or just an email of what the intentions are.
Sure.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll now close the public hearing, and is there a motion? Councilmember Nutting.
I move to suspend Rule 26A in order to enact draft ordinance number 23-021 on first reading.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? I see Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Oxiger. Motion 1 passes 5-2. All right. Councilmember Nutting.
I move to enact draft ordinance number 23-021, adopting findings of fact to support the extension of a moratorium to October 26, 2023.
Second.
I have a second. I'll give it to Councilmember Steinmetz on this one, Councilmember Pennington. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. I see it's all 7 of us. Took me by surprise. All right. Now we're going to move on to new business. The first thing we're going to do is talk about the Marina dock replacement, Marina development reimbursement. Through this process, I've talked in consultation with the city manager. We'll have presenters on this and the next item, but all questions are asked to be directed through the city manager for direction to who will answer them. So with that, I turn the floor over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. This item, the next two actually, relate to the ongoing process of development of the Marina Steps. And I'm very sorry that the gentleman who had the extended comments about the marina left. It's unfortunate, and we will get in touch with him, because a number of things that were stated were not accurate. So first of all, let me just clear the record with that, okay? Discussion about the Marina Steps began in 2017. There have been multiple hundreds of people attend community input hearings and meetings on development of the Marina Steps. We have boards of design filled with bullet points, with dots, that the community placed on the ones that they preferred. So there's been an extensive process, which unfortunately was interrupted by COVID. And that stopped the whole public input piece because we really weren't encouraging gatherings at that point, which is just the nature of what we had to deal with, the pandemic. Tonight, there is not a vote on a bond. That will come later, subject to council action this evening. If there is a vote on a bond, it needs to be perfectly clear that none of the debt service for the bond will be paid out of the general fund, meaning there will be no property tax from residents of the city to pay for the bonds. Okay, that can be done differently, and we'll explain that at that time. Let's see. The adaptive purpose building that's been discussed and the need for will be paid for by cash, which is there's a sufficient amount of cash to build that facility. Other facilities would be built with the proceeds from the bond issuance, but that will be discussed with the council on May 11th. So at this time, these two items, the first one, Jeff, our finance director, is going to describe that this is called a reimbursement resolution. And what this does is that when council approves, if council were to approve this tonight, soft costs relative to engineering, consultation, whatever that is, can, even though they would be those expenses incurred prior to the issuance of the bond, those costs could be included in the bond. So that's just part of the strategy for how do we cover the costs. The comment was made, there's confusion between $6 million and $9 million for the steps. There is no confusion. The cap on the steps, as it will be presented to council, is $9 million. That includes permitting, design, engineering, construction management, and the actual construction. It's anticipated the actual construction will be $6 million. The total bond would, for the portion for the Marina Steps would be $9 million to pick up all those soft costs. So tonight is just an opportunity for council to say, yes, if we move forward with the bond, we can attribute soft costs that are incurred to the bond. So that's primarily, Jeff, do you want to add to that? And we'll take any questions, council.
Yeah, I was just thinking I don't have much to add. I would say
smart.
The reimbursement resolution, it states that you have 60 days from incurring your first cost to declare your intent to use bond proceeds to reimburse those costs. And it's really that straightforward, along with what Michael said. It's not approving bonds. So I just want to reemphasize that. That's not that. If bonds were to be approved, then we would have this financial flexibility.
Thanks. Council, any
Questions, comments? Councilmember Harris, you have the floor first.
But there is that 60-day window.
Right, after you incur your first expenditure related to a project, you have 60 days to declare your intent. So in our case, if this were to pass this evening, we would have declared our intent already, so.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? Seeing none? Oh, Councilmember Nutting.
I move to adopt draft resolution number 23-022, declaring the city's intent to reimburse itself for expenditures incurred with respect to the Marina dock replacement and Marina redevelopment project.
Second from Councilmember Pennington. Any discussion before I take a vote? Seeing none. All those in favor, raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Oxiger, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Harris. Motion passes 6-1. Sir, you have the floor back.
Thank you. So, Tommy, the second item we have related to the Marina Steps project is the request for approval from council for approximately $780,000 for KPFF, who's our on-call engineer. And their role in this would be to do development, pretty much the design schematics and the bid documents where we could go out to bid for the steps. And there would be a process involved in that, which was outlined, which would also include community input relative to, in addition to the community input that's already been received, so the community can help articulate what those steps are going to look like. And we had done the first run at looking at the Marina Steps was approximately in the spring of 2017, and we had 3 different models. There was the Lamborghini, there was the Cadillac, and there was the Volkswagen. And so pretty much through some of what is possible will be defined by things like geotech studies and the construction dynamic. There was thought originally that there would be a building to the north of the steps. That I think is on hold relative to private investment. However, we would need to put a wall up there so it's safe on the north side. And then also we have the switchbacks on the south. And I think that the comment that somehow we will blow the ADA requirements is not feasible, since we've done some very significant projects that have all been compliant with ADA. And Andrew, who's our Public Works Director, is also our ADA compliance officer. So I'm sure that he's not here this evening, but he will absolutely assure that the requirements are met, as are these consultants. So what we want to do is go forward with the design schematics, and then we will bring back to council in May, as I mentioned, the actual bond. And the idea would be for the bid documents to be available by August 1st, so this could all be one bond, including dock replacements. And that's, we'll share with you on May 11th, but essentially that would be a cost borne by the marina. And then the steps and some other projects that we've identified, including several things in Redondo. But we'll bring all of that forward to council, but we'd like to get the bid documents prepared, and at the point there could be bid, especially the docks, because they're fish windows we're trying to hit relative to the timing of the construction. So what we're bringing tonight is the resources to develop the schematics for the steps.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
Is there anything in this, I didn't see it, but I want to double check. Is there anything in this that involves the bioswale down 223rd? Or is that a separate, that's a separate project, I believe?
That's absolutely a separate project. It's a project that especially Senator Kaiser had gotten, the legislature allocated $300,000 plus some of the royalties that Commerce gets, or fees that Commerce gets. So it's $309,000, but that is perceived absolutely as a distinct project. There will be assurances that as the steps are designed, there could be appropriate conveyances for stormwater, but there will be no action taken on 223rd. That is not part of this. The only part of it is, and it's a great point, Council Member, that the only part of this is to make sure that there's enough symmetry and integration so that future development at 223rd integrated into the steps is possible.
Thank you.
I have a question, Michael. Could you give us a little bit of outline, because part of this includes a public outreach and public comment process. Could you give us a little bit of outline that's going to take place and how?
We anticipate that will take place. And what we would do is hold, like public meetings to review where we are. But I think one thing that's important, the way that we're trying to fashion this bond, your moral support, man. I start to blow it. Yeah, no. But the idea is that, there's the steps as one project, but really the critical piece of connectivity between the steps and the marina will be a plaza. And what we want to assure is a huge amount of public input relative to what that plaza would look like. Would that be kiddie water park? Or would it be for concerts or a gathering place or all of those things? And that will be opportunity to really get a lot of public input on what the design and development of that looks like specifically. And then within the context of the engineering constraints relative to the steps, we, as I mentioned earlier, will seek public input relative to how people would like to see that get developed. And that will all happen in probably the near term.
Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Could you clarify a little bit the state participation and faith in this project, that looks like we might have some funding coming from the state in regard to the steps?
Well, Councilmember Steinmetz, is it bad luck to anticipate the actions of the lake?
Well, there's.
So
It's not over till it's over.
Yeah, right.
I know, but.
So we've had, we got about $2 million from the state, especially Representative Orwell pushed this, as did Senator Kaiser, for the bulkhead project. And there's funds allocated in the current Senate on the capital budget from the Senate side, I think of at least $1 million for the Marina Steps, and also some money for Redondo. And I just want to mention, anecdotally, I ran into Senator Kaiser in the post office not long ago, and she made the comment, that the Marina Steps are the heart of everything. And so so our legislators, and I think we have the best delegation in the state between the 30th and the 33rd, are very supportive of our efforts to move this forward. And also, I might add, relative to that, the moratorium, the item you just had, funds for the Barnes Creek Trail. So there's a lot of support for infrastructure development in the legislature for what we're doing.
Councilmember Harris.
So the gentleman who made the extended comment, if he got some details wrong, it's not because he, it's because it's confusing. And this is, I used to get, people would say you use the word outrageous too much. This is completely outrageous. We're making a decision on this based on this, like, okay, and I know that there's a person with an AutoCAD drawing somewhere a three-dimensional rendering, and the way this should work is that there should be pictures and animations now before spending the money, because we are allocating a bunch of money with that 60-day window. We are conflating the docks, totally different, nothing to do with the land side. We're conflating the enterprise fund with cash, with bonds. This is a very complicated thing, and the notion that this is the 223rd and the bioswales is independent, it's like we make it one thing when we want to, and then we say, oh, totally separate, when it's inconvenient to do so. And I see MSEs, and you put, you know what an MSE is? That's the, you go to the third runway. That's the wall that holds up the third runway. It's not like, oh, if you don't like it, you can just move it around. It's there forever. And so what we're voting on is essentially the train leaving the station on the entire deal and basically a framework. And so the public will be able to say, well, do you want a splashy park or not? But the experience of everybody there, that's what's being voted on tonight. It's outrageous. There should have been a virtual town hall that shows people the whole plan, which is already known. Okay, and the idea that we're outsourcing this to, it's ridiculous, and yeah, nobody should be voting for anything until you have actual pictures and renderings that people can walk around and go, oh, I get what this lived experience is going to be. The fact that people are even talking about it. If this were any other city in the area, there would have already been 3 or 4 public meetings about it. And the idea that we're talking about, when you hear the number 30% in engineering people, that means the train has left the station. And we're talking about getting there this summer. Yeah, outrageous.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. City Manager Mathias.
Yeah, Councilmember, when you mentioned the gentleman who spoke and then left, it reminded me of the many times you came to the council before you were a council member and would make public comment and then leave before you heard the answers. And so you say there should be 3 or 4 meetings. We had about 200 people on an Argosy boat talking about development of the marina. We had 300 to 400 people at the yacht club several years ago. We had a meeting in September.
I have the sign.
Sir, you're out of order. Let him finish.
Okay?
Sir, you're out of order. Go ahead. Sir, please. Thank you. Please finish. Please continue. Did you?
I don't really have more to say.
Okay.
Apparently, it's going in one year, and I'm not sure it even made it to the other year.
Yeah, all right. So let's move on. Councilmember Oxiger.
It seems to me that, given the fact that what we're talking about doing with the docks and eliminating a lot of the small moorage places, spaces, that, the dry stack storage is going to be critical to making the marina work financially. There's no revenue generated by the steps. There are several concerns that have been expressed about the dry stack storage, and I've heard everything from, well, we can use it, we can use the back wall of the dry stack storage or the adaptive purpose building to shore up the wall below the South Shores condo. But as somebody pointed out, okay, you put the steps in and you're eliminating fire access. And we just saw what happened on Lake Union when you've got dry stack storage. They don't drain those boats. They don't drain the fuel tanks on those boats before they put them there. Each one is a bomb. So we've got a very small area that we're talking to with the marina footprint. I think the dry stack storage is critical to how we make this overall project a success. That's what we should cite first. We need to, figure out that problem first and then worry about how you wrap the steps around it and how you get the people somewhere else. But this process right now, it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yeah, I don't know and I think the dry stacks in Seattle were old enough that they probably weren't sprinklered, built to a different code. Fortunately, we have good international fire codes and building codes and those things. And certainly the fire marshal's office at your fire department will weigh in heavily, especially when you're building and you're putting things below a residential area. So that is addressed in code. There's a means to make sure, in terms of access, that access has been divided for years with that gate. I know the fire department knows which end of the marina to go into based on what the call is and the location. So a lot of that stuff has been worked out, but certainly as a part of the review and the initial plans, and it goes into that fire marshal's office, and they are very diligent about what they need to do to make sure that the community is safe.
Just a sec. I want to make sure that other people have an opportunity to speak. Anybody else here? Because I have a few comments. First, I'm going to address a couple things. I heard the fact that it doesn't make any money, and I disagree. The fact is that it's a great amenity for the community. That's what we're trying to do here. We've always dreamed of creating a space where all our residents can come and enjoy. It's very attractive. It brings other folks to the community, and they do their dollars here. And it's also definitely something that investors and developers pay attention to, is the amenities that come along with the city, the walkability, the access, and so many other things that are compounded together. So it definitely will bring a benefit, not only for our residents to enjoy as an experience, but it will bring economic development, interest, and investment into the community. As far as the fire thing, I think it's a little irresponsible to call boats bombs. It's just the wrong word. And as Councilmember Pennington had said, the latest and greatest fire code will always be applied, and then we would be assured, I was told that that system didn't have fire suppression, and it was arson as well. We would be probably a much more secure operation and built the code to suppress fire and everything else. So I think trying to scare people is inappropriate in this particular case. Anyway, you have the floor, Councilmember Oxer.
First of all, I'm not trying to scare people. I'm trying to, and actually, you made my point, Councilmember Pennington. The fire marshal's got to weigh in on this. Fire marshal's got to determine whether or not you've got the ability to access and, deal with fire suppression. If we've already got the steps in place, then we've got the fire marshal then saying, no, you haven't got sufficient here. That means we have to start moving the dry stack storage somehow to make it appropriate. Otherwise, we have to tear out the steps we've already put in. We need to settle that element first, where we're going to put that dry stack storage. How are we going to have access to the launch? All of that. It needs to be settled first. You then wrap the steps around the available space, because the steps are not going to generate money. They may, provide access up into other areas, but there is no money generated by those steps.
Councilmember Harris, your second time.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, here's the thing, because I've been following this stuff for a while. Sheckler's deal was always, how the business park. I'll bet you a lunch, sorry, Bob, that it would bring tens of thousands of people into town every day. And you'd go, wait a minute, I know the FAA guys, they get a half an hour for lunch. They're not gonna, but that was the deal, because it was shiny. And nobody actually ran the numbers on a tax-exempt business park, basically. And that's what this is. This is the shiny penny trick. But on a practical note, my niece is in a wheelchair, and I look at things like the gangway going down to the ferry. The thing is, two-dimensional, okay? I don't care if it's ADA compliant. There are a hell of a lot of ADA compliant places, high schools and stuff, that are a pain in the ass and nigh on impossible for people with disabilities to have access for. You need, and we're in 2023, you want to have that 3D view, because if you don't, and I'm so stroppy about it because we have the tools to give people the lived experience. Because otherwise, if you have the 2D view, then you end up with like, oh gee, does my boat have enough room to turn around? Because it looks okay, on the map, on the drawing, but you have to actually be able to walk around the thing. And thank God that we live in a time where you can create that kind of experience. You don't have to find out the oops like in my era. And the idea that we're even proceeding without that baseline of tech, it's just, yeah, you already used the word outrageous, and so that's it. Yeah. So, but just for anybody, everybody who is disabled, I am just telling you, you stand at the edge of Overlook and you look down and you go, huh, with that grade, what would it take? Because it's not about going down, gravity works both ways, and getting people up. Okay.
Can I, before we go any further, I'd like to see if I can get a motion. And then I'll give you the floor for discussion. Councilmember Nutting?
I move to approve the 2022-2023 on-call general civil engineering task assignment number 07 with KPPF Inc. that will provide design and permitting services for the Marina Steps project in the amount of $785,827.58 and authorize the city manager to sign said formal task agreement substantially in the form as submitted.
Do I have a second? The second, and then
Second.
Councilmember, our Deputy Mayor Buxton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this represents one big first step, a movement toward something that I talked about from the very first door I ever knocked on. People have talked about, I make a joke about a running bet I have with a citizen who talked about this 20 years ago, and he insists that this is never going to happen. We're never going to move forward on our marina redevelopment. We're never going to do anything in this sleepy little town. So I've got a glass of wine riding on this. But people have talked about this for a couple of decades. I mean, the city manager talks about, 2017, but we already spent I think it was a study session talking about how this was talked about in 2012, 2010, 2012, 2013. So people have talked about this over dinner, over coffee, over on social media. I mean, there has been talk about this over the airwaves for a long time. And we've got money that I'm believing for that's on its way from the state, which means it's not just our representatives that believe in this regional draw and health for the state, but all of our legislators are going to be voting on this. We are moving toward economic health to do this. And there's always going to be a story about where something like this failed. If that's what you're looking for, you will find what you're looking for. If you're looking for a bad story, a negative story, a failure story. But most communities who carefully invest in a centerpiece in their community, whether it's an ice arena or a splash pad or an ADA park, this is destined to have components that will appeal to everybody in our community. And we have to deal with a hillside, and we're putting it in there. So there is going to be a hill that you're going to walk up or down unless you park on the main level, and there will be parking down there too. I mean, I could go through and answer every single little thing here, but we are trying to move forward to put a beautiful centerpiece that I hear all the time. People say, Des Moines doesn't have anything to come and see. Well, this will be something to come and see, to come and play, to come and enjoy, to invite people to. It will definitely be something to come and see. And it will do everything. The mayor's already talked about the economic draw and benefit. You put something in our city and people will want to be next to it. People will want to invest here, their businesses. They'll want to be close to this beautiful thing. And we need to move boldly forward. I am so in favor of doing this, and I don't want to wait anymore. Thank you.
Councilmember Pennington.
Hey, so I will tell you that in terms of what this is it provides funding for design and permitting. And part of that design is the pre-design work that the city does and does with this service, that does with the fire department. And that is where you work through all of these issues. And I know the fire marshal's office very well, and they don't give two hoots about local politics. What they care about is fire and life safety. So these issues, and they'll, I'm sure, be brought up, will be looked at with a view of fire and life safety and how that affects the marina and the residents around that. So I would want to put your mind at ease that that will happen, and it will happen in an unbiased way. Thank you.
Councilmember Nutting, and then Councilmember Steinmetz.
I just got to ride on the coattails of Councilmember Pennington. Being in the construction industry, out of all of the inspections that we have, the fire marshal walking the job site at the end of the project to give us TCO and C of O is one of the most dreaded inspections, because you don't know if the strobes are going to work right, if the horns are going to work right. All the testing that you've done, one can fail, and you fail the entire
walk and your setback in your inspection and your C of O another week, 2 weeks, possibly a month, depending on how busy the fire marshal is. So they go over everything with a fine-tooth comb, and although the building department gets the final say, the fire marshal gets the final say before the building department will sign off on it. So it'll be looked at stringently. That's all I've got to say.
Councilor Steinmetz.
You got to count me in the camp of let's get on with this already. I mean, we've been talking about this for years. We've had the concept of the steps since 2017. That has been a source of conversation throughout the community. We've had several big citywide, well, not citywide, but big meetings in order to educate people, to show some of the concepts. Some of those concepts have changed, but that's what this is about. This is the concept level, and we have now a reasonable concept to start going forward from. But until we've got something from the engineers that's saying it's going to look like this, the fire marshal doesn't get to say anything yet. We cannot simply go through, but there could be this problem, but there could be this problem. We actually have to get to this place where we can present plans to the various agencies that regulate the building of this in order to get there. That's what this is going to do. And there's no sense in crying, oh my God, somebody could, lose control going down the steps. It's really unfortunate that, people try to put fear and emotional into what is a very rational decision, trying to move our community forward and to do something with a marina that still looks like it was 1970. We need to do something with that. That will in turn create a community draw, which there may be a benefit to. And I think that we can accommodate putting in the dry racks or the dry storage spaces and figuring out where everything is going to go. But we've got to have the engineers take a look at that first. This is the concept. This is not the point at which we're measuring every little piece yet. And we've got to get to that level before the fire engineers, the ADA code, and everything else gets in there. This is what allows us to do it. So let's get on with it.
Councilor Steinmetz, I couldn't said it better. And I think that a lot of people can point to the north parking lot and some of the recent finished work to point that we do not do anything shabby. With that, I'm going to go ahead and take a, sir. Well, okay. So you've had you've had 2 times, but we did do a motion after. So I'll give you one more before I take a vote.
It's not a question of whether or not we get on with it. It's what are we getting on with? It's what is the more critical piece that you have to situate first and then make the stuff work around it. You don't come in and build, don't come in and put in the landscaping and then decide, you're going to build the house. You build the house first and you landscape around it. And so the thing is, we need to know where the heck that dry stack storage facility is going to be before we, miscite it. Because what is the fire marshal going to have to measure against? He comes in and says, oh, well, okay, the steps look fine, everything like that, but, you've wasted space where you could have, more appropriately cited the most important piece in this project. Thank you.
Councilman Harris, I'm going to allow you one more time before we take a vote.
Very magnanimous, Mayor. First of all, this ADA thing it's not like a film noir where, you're pushing the old lady down the stairs and so on. This is a question of convenience and equity. People who have disabilities deserve to have convenience. it is humiliating to live otherwise. Second of all, the CIP called for us to do an RFQ again, and that is, I think, what people left January 26th. They thought that there was going to be some other process where there would be bids and different ideas, but regardless, there is an AutoCAD drawing somewhere that shows what this entire big picture master plan looks like. It's somewhere, okay? And we should see it. And we already voted for 20 grand for a virtual town hall in 2021, and we should simply have those drawings and then have this meeting. And finally, you know, budgets are zero-sum games. We're talking about this like, well, you know, we're going to fund this and we're going to fund that. Guess what? This is the park that you're not going to get somewhere else. This is the services for human beings that don't happen. We are prioritizing this stuff according to the needs, wants, and desires of, I brought up Scheckler, the idea that, yeah, this is going to bring economic development 10 years from now. Well, you know, I'm on a slightly different timeline, and I think a lot of other residents are too. They've been waiting for parks, they've been waiting for other things, and every dollar we spend here is a dollar you won't spend for public safety, for parks, for programs, for whatever it is that your deal is. Thank you.
City Manager Mathias had a comment really quick before I take a vote.
A couple of things. First of all, you confuse operating costs with capital costs. This does not affect law enforcement. This does not affect provision of services, any of that. Secondly, you made the point at the RFQ, which is a very interesting point, because it were your efforts to make sure that they thwarted the possibility of a hotel, of private investment on the marina. The only reason we would do an RFQ would be to select a private sector partner and do a public-private partnership. The efforts that you, Councilmember Harris especially, led the charge of no hotel, even though the purveyors of the private sector who would invest would have helped cover millions of dollars of the cost of the steps, would have built an elevator to go from the ground floor up in the building next to the steps, which we still need to figure out that piece of access. None of that is going to happen at this time, and congratulations. But that's why there's no RFQ. That's on you. The second part of it is we decided, okay, let's make this public works projects. And one thing I'm really proud of is to be able to come to the council after all we've been through financially and say we have the resources and the bond rating to do a significant bond for redevelopment of our city, and we can pay for it, and it will not use residents' property taxes. So that's kind of where we are with all of this. Thank you, Mayor.
Let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, and myself. All those opposed, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Oxiger. Motion passes 5-2. All right, moving on to the next item. Citizens Advisory Committee. I want to thank all those that applied for the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I can't tell you how difficult it was to look through the applications and make recommendations for the selection. I want those to know who were not selected that we would like to keep them on file, because there is a possibility a member could resign, and in some cases, we assigned, part of the ordinance has that I have half the groups being for 1 year and half for 2. And those that were for 1 year in particular, so we had to make a decision on those neighborhoods. What I did was, when I looked at particular neighborhoods that had 7 and 8 applications, I said, let's make those 1 and give some people an opportunity to speak, and then shortly thereafter, in a year or so, then the others would have that opportunity, a couple more. So we'd like to keep you on file. So anyway, part of the process, as the city manager mentioned, I met with a consultant, and I'm excited about that. This is one of those things that they'll help facilitate and capture the information from the residents. And I see a member out there. We were one of the few people that were on the original Citizens Advisory Committee, and not only did I pay attention to it, but I saw what worked and what didn't. I was a student of that. And so basically, I see 4 meetings for this year. The ordinance calls for 3. We will do an early May meeting, meet and greet, and get some original things discussed and so forth. As was mentioned, there'll be an invite in the public realm when we're interviewing for a police chief, giving people a chance to speak to those individuals and give us their assessment. So I'm looking forward to that. We plan on a full-on neighborhood and city concerns meeting in July as well. And then one of the constraints in the ordinance is that we review the budget with the members of the Citizens Advisory Committee. So what'll happen is in October, usually the council sees the budget in the first part of the month, and then probably shortly thereafter in that week, we would show and talk and speak with the Citizens Advisory Committee. I don't have exact dates right now, but they're being worked on. And with that, do I have a motion before we begin discussion? Our Deputy Mayor Buxton.
I move to confirm the mayoral appointments as shown on Exhibit A to be the primary representatives on the Citizens Advisory Committee, effective immediately and expiring on the date listed.
And I have a second from Councilmember Nutting. Any discussion on the primary applicants? Deputy Mayor Buxton, and then I'll go to you, Councilmember Harris.
One, I am super thrilled about this. Looking through, there's a nice array of diversity, I feel, of not only of cultures, ages, genders. It's very nice. I'm looking forward to seeing that interaction and that input from our community. And also, I am kind of excited about the ability to work with a consultant. And could you clarify that just a little bit more? You talked about you worked with a consultant. What did you mean by that, Mayor?
Well, I gave her a city of the tour, or tour of the city, and tour of the city of the tour. Anyway, she saw the town, right? And we talked about some of the things. We talked about, she suggested certain ideas of how to capture, how to present, how to capture the concerns of the residents and so forth. We drove through every single neighborhood. And so the thing is that she is a professional in communication. She was actually one that had actually applied for the communications consultant. And I think she finished a close second, and I'm very impressed. She's done several things. She actually ran a working group that was involved in the Port of Olympia construction and so forth. So she's not new at this.
So so you consulted with her once. Will she be involved ongoing?
Yes, she will be a continual process in this. And part of it's that even though I'm supposed to be the presiding officer there, I felt it was important that we have somebody who can facilitate the meeting, capture the comments, and allow me to stand to the side. I think a tendency would be that I might be defensive or want to defend something, and that's not what I want to do here. I want to capture their thoughts and concerns, and so the idea is to get that free capture. So it takes that out of the equation, because what they're supposed to do as a collection, inform us of what they think is important in their neighborhoods and the city, right? And that's supposed to come to the council as a whole. And I don't want to take away from that. So this was in discussion with the city manager. We thought this was the best method, and it's far different than what we did before. And I know Bill over here can attest to that. So anyway, it's more of a let's get the facts of how people really feel and not try to be defensive. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be voting no on this, and that is absolutely no reflection on any of the applicants. Thank you so much. But the first thing that I would suggest the Citizens Advisory Group look at is just the process of these Citizens Advisory Committees. One of the successful applicants, their application is redacted. Okay, I'm like, so how am I supposed to evaluate them? Okay, the majority of successful applicants, they submitted their descriptive text, their resumes, as separate documents, which are not included in the packet. So I have no idea who these people are, And it's diminishing to the people, many of you, who took the time to fill out very lengthy explanations of your qualifications, and they're wonderful. And I want to thank you, and I hope you persist with that, okay? But I, as a council member, cannot discriminate between between one and another application because I just don't have enough information. And so, great idea, terrible execution. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris, I'm going to point to that one. The reason why it's redacted is because without invite, you visited their residence, which was inappropriate. So on her request is why that address was redacted from that experience. Sir, that's the facts of the matter. You asked and you made a big deal of it, and honestly, you were the cause of it. Does anybody else have any more comments before I take a vote? Councilmember Oxiger.
Will the Citizens Advisory Committee meetings be televised, and will they be recorded?
I'm going to turn over to the city attorney. Typically, they had not been in the past when I experienced them.
But they are public meetings.
Well, they're not council meetings, so the Open Public Meetings Act wouldn't apply. We haven't historically recorded them, just like we don't record the Arts Commission meetings, we don't record Senior Services Committee meetings, we don't record any of the advisory committee meetings. So I would say that that's really a discretionary call for the mayor or for administration to make.
So I will ensure that they're at least recorded. I can't say how, but we will work out the logistics with the chief administrative officer and the city clerk.
And will the public be able to attend these meetings?
That I can't say right now. I mean, the fact is they're representatives of their neighborhood, but if it's a public meeting, then probably most likely they would be able to attend too, but they just wouldn't be able to comment.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion before we take a vote on the first motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Oxiger, and myself. All those opposed, Councilmember Harris. All right. Motion on the second.
I move to confirm the mayoral appointments as shown on Exhibit B to the alternate representative on the Citizens Advisory Committee, effective immediately and expiring on the date listed.
And I have a second from Councilmember Nutting. Any discussion on this before we take a vote? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Pennington, Councilmember Steinmetz, Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Oxiger, and myself. All those opposed, Councilmember Harris. All right. This is the time for new business. Oh, Deputy Mayor Buxton, I'm sorry.
This is a little bit unusual, but I do know that some of the appointees have attended tonight, and I would like to applaud them if they're willing to stand and be recognized. There are several of our appointees in the audience tonight.
Yes, and I apologize. Let's recognize those that are. Appreciate the opportunity to hear your input as we move through the city, together. So anyway, with that, we're going to move on to new business. That has not previously been discussed before the council. This is not a time for questions about old business. Council members can submit questions to seek updates and previously discussed business to the city manager at any time. Do any council members have new business they would like to propose? Seeing none. All right, board and committee reports. We're going to start with Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. On Monday, the 10th, met with the Des Moines Arts Commission, and we discussed the possibility of a mural program and getting community input with that. We also discussed the summer events and the planning. Just a quick overview, the beer garden, arts and for culture, and then the farmers market and summer concerts. It's going to be a fun summer. Look forward to what we all have planned. And then this afternoon, I chaired the Environment Committee meeting. The only agenda item was the capital projects improvement plan for the surface water management. We currently don't have anything in construction, but we're looking to go out to bid for a few. Just wanted to point out that items 8, 9, and 10 on the consent agenda are helping with the 24th Avenue pipeline replacement, and those were approved. So we look forward to that running together, and we're combining a couple projects to right there at the culvert replacement at by the flagpole on 216th and up Des Moines Memorial Drive to make it a more efficient and hopefully cost-effective project. And then I wanted to bring up Mount Rainier High School auction, the first, from what I know, the first ever, Thursday, May 18th at 6 p.m. at the Cove in Normandy Park. Tickets are on sale at www.mrhsboosterclub.com. And if there's any other questions, I posted on my Facebook page earlier today with all the information. And that concludes my remarks, Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor said, later this month, we, along with the other cities, will be sending a delegation to Washington, sponsored by the port, concerning airport issues. I've already met with Congressman Smith and Senator Murray's offices about it, because my group, ctecnoise.info, has been working for a long time on this legislation, and particularly port package updates. And they fully acknowledge a certain dilemma that I want to point out, and I've called it the appearance of engagement. It's basically making every effort to look like you're doing something in order to not make that something happen. We've become experts at it. And the good news is that the legislation on port package updates is very, very good. But the dilemma, first of all, you have to get the law passed, and the last time they tried, they got 43 votes out of 435. And the other thing is that even if you got a law passed this year, there are loopholes in the regs where they could put off actual construction until 2029. And that's the best legislation you can get. So we would always push for doing something at the local level, but every few years the staff would say to the port commissioners, no. See, what you want to do is go to Washington and get the FAA money, because that's where the squillions of dollars are. And the port commissioners would go, really? Oh, well, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Let's forget about doing something locally. And it's just been a tactic to avoid getting anything done. We always could do something about the updates to port packages. We just didn't. And the trick is you need to get local electeds here in Des Moines and at the port who are on the same page. That's really what will drive the discussion. Elections do matter, and we frankly have been pushing it down the road intentionally for decades. It's the reason I ran against a longtime port employee, okay? Because everybody would say, oh, I wish if only the FAA would get it together. And the residents have all my sympathy, because it's tough to know what's what. You'll always hear, everybody will say, yeah, noise and pollution, I'm against it, you know? But you have to be willing to dig a little bit deeper, and I certainly hope you will do so. Please, if you have a port package, follow ctecnoise.info. We're doing our darndest to help get you some relief. Thank you.
Councilmember Pennington.
Okay, then. I'll be nice and not make my other comment. But, so
thank you to everybody who came here this evening to take your time out of the evening and spend your time here. It's the most effective way to have influence on your local government, and so thank you for doing that. To all of those that that put in, and for those that were selected to the Citizens Advisory Committee, thank you very much for that. It will be a bit of an eye-opening for you, and it will give you an insight as to what council does, or certainly some of the information. I'm trying to put this nicely. I hope you don't come away with too many bruises, because you know, it can be a tough position. But thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. I attended the economic, or not the economic, but the environmental committee this evening, and you got the report on that. Cecil Powell Park, that's been a long time coming. Last time I was on council, we had a discussion, and so it's a long time coming. And I really support the expediting of this project. So thanks again, and hopefully we got a lot done tonight and not just looked like it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody who volunteered to be on the Citizens Advisory Committee and got, and those that did get actually selected for that. I hope that nobody who didn't get selected goes away. I hope you stay involved in the city. There are still a number of commissions and boards and things that you can do in the city that we would love to have your help with. So please keep yourselves involved, and your understanding of how the city works will grow exponentially. And you know, don't be afraid by the negativity. There's always going to be some. It'll roll off. Just let it roll right off your back. The one of the things that I picked up as a new thing this year is that I am the representative for Des Moines from the Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee, and I've talked about this a little bit last month, but we finally had the first live or in-person meeting over at Renton City Hall. I got to meet the council or the chair of their city council and sat next to her, and you know, we had a lot of nice discussions. I want to kind of give you a little bit of update on it. I'm not going to go into too much detail. We, you know, item number 6, because we've got a bunch of stuff to go through, was a legislative update. The one thing that was clear, something I've brought up before, is that there is what's called a middle housing bill, the missing middle bill, which would essentially take away the power of the cities to zone neighborhoods, particularly for single family, and that's going to pass. There is a bill that has come out of the Senate now that needs a small level of concurrence from the House, and they believe that is going to pass. And so, you know, it may be that once that happens, you're going to get a duplex, a fourplex, or possibly even a sixplex built in the lot next to yours. There are some good reasons why we need that level of housing, but boy, it sure is going to change the characteristic of a lot of neighborhoods. And then wastewater rates from the county are going to be going up. There's a formula that they follow. There was some discussion of whether that formula was accurate or not. I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but boy, it's getting deep. In August, there is going to be a veteran Seniors and Human Services levy renewal on the ballot. This is funding that already exists. It's going to be extended. It's a slight change to it, but essentially will continue to provide housing and services to those particular groups that are more vulnerable. Of course, the affordable housing county-wide planning project is still going on. There's a group that is meeting trying to come up with a plan. The current plan actually is pretty consistent with what has come out of the Sound Cities Association Affordable Housing Committee, and that's a good thing. So, and those really are the big issues that we dealt with last night. It was a long meeting and very interesting. You know, but these are the things that affect cities and affect your lives. You know, when your wastewater rates go up, that's less that you can spend somewhere else. And it was articulated that there may be a level of tax fatigue when all of these little things come along. Rates go up a little bit, we renew a levy on something, but people get tired of paying more and more taxes, even if it's a nickel and a dime at a time. And so perhaps we need to figure out a better way to look at that. Otherwise, I think that's all for my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. Moving on to Councilmember Oxiger.
I too would like to thank everybody that applied for the Citizens Advisory Committee, and to people that continually come to try and express their views on how we should be shaping the city. I know it can be frustrating sometimes that, we up here don't necessarily see, as a group, don't necessarily see things your way, but keep pressing. It'll come around. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Oxiger. Moving on to Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. So, touche, you guys. Good job for applying, and we're looking forward to hearing your voices. So, since our last meeting, I've had about 30 engagements, visited with hundreds of people, interacted with hundreds of people, discussion and advocacy about community leadership, policy, and economic development, just across the board. But all over these meetings, I think the three most repeated issues of concern to people are public safety, zoning, and housing, and at all of these different tables. We did have a public safety meeting last week, and the chief gave a great summary during our meeting, talked about accreditation, our community report that they do a great job in communicating out to the public every month about what they do. We've got a great ham radio network that's been built over the South Sound region for emergencies, that if everything goes down, those guys are live. And there's some great trainings coming up for emergencies, so that's what we're doing in public safety. In regard to housing, I did go on Councilmember Steinmetz just talked about missing middle. I did go on a tour with a bunch of leaders and electeds from around the region to just discover, be educated about middle housing, and there's some great projects in Kirkland. Of course, it's Kirkland, right? The median home price in Kirkland's like $1.4 million. So it's real different than what we have here, but what I do want to say, missing middle housing, wherever you have it in your community, I think two things. It's an invitation. This is not affordable housing necessarily, but it is a segment of missing housing. It's an invitation to historically marginalized communities or segments of people, and it's also an invitation to the next generation. It's below the mid-range point of our communities. It's a way to create housing that is financeable, create home ownership. It's wealth building for this generation and the next generation. So we're really working on it. And Des Moines really has been in the front lines of some of this. We've got a great missing middle project that we did on 240th a handful of years ago. And now that you know about it, it almost maybe looks like condos, but they're fee simple homes. You own the land underneath, and it's a mortgage that is for the home and the land, and it's just zero lot lines. So everybody shares a law, but that's the kind of missing middle. And we've got this project going on 216th, similar kind of thing. So we've been kind of front runners here in Des Moines in working some of these things. I'm pretty pleased with our staff. In the future, I think working this in our community as well as possibly streamlining ADU stuff. But, you know, I think that our staff's going to be coming forward with some things when our comp plan update comes up next year. We'll see what they have. Zoning is that segues to the zoning. Every city's working on our comp plans, and our city's working hard too. So important for our staff to focus on that, and we covered that tonight. I am, just the last thing, just in closing, I'm looking forward to this trip to Washington, D.C. We have worked really hard in collaborating and crafting some great messages, and it's not a waste of time. It is work, and it's difficult for me to hear that somebody disparages that work, and I just want to encourage you, it will be work, and it will be heard messages from your electeds. And it's not just going to be easy and fun. We are going to work. So I want to guarantee you, somebody's going to hear our voice from the city in Washington, D.C. in a week and a half. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton. Well, Councilmember Steinmetz, yes, don't swim in our lane is the message that we'd like to send to our state legislators in some areas. Deputy Mayor Buxton, I couldn't agree with you more as far as I'm looking forward to the effectiveness I think our airport view can be. A couple of things that I got 2 pages full of events I attended over since our last meeting. But the Coffee with the Mayor, I want to thank those that attended. I thought it was a great conversation. Really appreciated being able to sit down and have a reasonable conversation with everybody. Loved the extravaganza event that we had at the beach park this weekend. We had 180 kids sign up, and I think it was 40 or 50 more showed up and signed up too. It was great to see the diversity there and many kids enjoying that. Just a couple days ago, I met with a group of mayors. Mayor Harrell, from the mayor of Seattle, if you don't know that, most people do, organized a meeting with several of the mayors, particularly from the South End. And we came and talked about some of our concerns and differences and ways we could work strategically together. The mayors of Kent and Auburn and Federal Way and Burien and so many other cities were there. It was a great thing. We had some very frank and honest conversations about crime and some of the other things and some of the problems that somehow sometimes seep out of Seattle and into our communities. But it was a good start, and we plan on meeting in the future. We had the transportation meeting. We went over the CIP and the adjustments. It's a very robust program. We're getting a lot of things done. We're getting street improvements. We're getting sidewalks. We're doing a tremendous amount in the town that you're going to see over the course of the rest of the year, and I'm excited about it. The last thing I'm going to say is I had many people comment on the article I wrote in the Current. It wasn't an easy article to write, but it's something I felt needed to be said. And a part of it is because a lot of folks were talking about solutions, like certain suggestions being solutions. And quite honestly, I needed to be frank with everybody that in some cases I'm challenging everybody to look at what we're trying to think and do, including myself, of how we can do this the best. But we have gone down that road. I'm looking forward, Mr. Linscott, to sitting down and having a conversation and debating our points of view on that. But I did get a lot of positive responses too, and many of them were that's what needed to be said. Now, not everybody's going to agree with me, and I'm okay with that. And that's part of this process. But as you heard today, there is going to be public input and comment and stuff like that as we go through the process. But there's some things we've talked enough about, and that's what my point is. I'm not against public comment. I'm for it. It's just in the process, but beating a dead bush over and over again is going to accomplish us nothing. With that, do I have a motion to it? Oh, excuse me. The next meeting will be May 4th for a regular city council meeting. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second, I have a second. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Everybody have a safe weekend and enjoy yourself.